Hey everybody, it's Lon.TV, and we're taking a look today at a brand new all-in-one VR headset from Oculus. This is the Oculus Go, and it costs about $199. It's kind of the gateway drug to more expensive virtual reality systems, but the cool thing is that you don't need anything beyond what you see in front of you here to use it. The entire system is contained inside of this headset. You don't need to connect it to a PC, you don't need to have a phone to use it. You just turn it on and pop it on your head and you are good to go. So we're going to be exploring how this works and how well it works here in just a second. But I do want to let you know, in the interest of full disclosure, this came in free of charge through the Amazon Vine program. However, all the opinions you're about to hear are my own. Nobody is paying for this review, and no one has reviewed what you're about to see before I uploaded it. So let's get into it now and see what this headset is all about. So let's take a closer look now at the hardware. This is the 32 gigabyte version that costs $199. They have a 64 gig version that costs $249. And if you do plan to download a lot of movies from their store and download a bunch of apps and games, you might want to spend the extra $50 for the 64 gig version because there is no SD card slot on here to expand its storage. It's powered by a Snapdragon 821 processor. It's kind of a lower-end mobile chipset, but it's good enough for what you're about to see us look at in this review. It's got 4 gigs of RAM, and it supports AC Wi-Fi, so you can connect it directly to your Wi-Fi network for playing multiplayer games and that sort of thing. Very lightweight. It's just over a pound, or 468 grams. It fits pretty comfortably on my head here. The strap here is a little more complicated than we saw on that Lenovo Mirage system we looked at last week, so you do have to adjust a few different Velcro things here, but once it's on, it doesn't feel all that top-heavy. It is relatively comfortable. I found that Oculus does have some very comfortable headsets. Their PC-based one also feels very comfortable to wear. I did find that I've got a little bit of light bleeding through where my nose is. If I look straight, kind of straight down, I'll see it. But generally, it's been a pretty good experience for me from a fit and finish standpoint. I also like the fact that they've got speakers built right into it. In fact, they embedded them inside of these two little headbands here on the left and right hand side of the display, and you can really get good audio out of these things, surprisingly. Good spatial sound, good stereo separation. It's going right to your ears, and this is nice because you can just hand it off to somebody without having to get headphones and all that other stuff plugged into it. It does support headphones as well, but if you just want to pass it around, you can do that. There's a controller that comes with it also, a very simple controller. It's got a trigger here for playing some games that require it. It also has a capacitive touch surface here that is clickable. I found some apps allow a tap without a click, and it seems to be a little too sensitive for me for that. I found myself doing unintentional button pushes because it was looking for a tap and not a click. It also has a back button here, and this one down below pulls up the Oculus interface to switch apps or download more stuff for you to consume on it. Now, battery life on this headset is about 2.5 hours if you're watching movies, about 2 hours if you're playing games and apps on it. That doesn't seem like a lot, but it's about what I saw out of the Lenovo Mirage standalone set we looked at about 2 weeks ago. And to be honest, after keeping your head locked up in one of these things for an hour or so, your eyes will be ready for a break well before the battery dies, I think. But it should get you through an entire movie. They do, though, have a micro USB connector for charging, so you could presumably plug it into that charging adapter with a nice long USB cable and get unlimited power, essentially, or use an external battery pack. The controller is powered by a AA battery. It comes with a dry cell battery, so I expect this will probably last a good long time between battery swaps. So don't have to worry about charging this thing, just the headset here. You also have a headphone jack here if you don't want to use the built-in speakers, which I think are more than adequate, but if you want better fidelity, of course, plugging in some headphones will certainly do the trick. You've got a volume rocker here along with a power switch. It will put itself to sleep when you take it off your head to preserve power, but you can shut it down all the way if you want by holding down that power button and selecting the shutdown command with the controller here. So that is the overall hardware. Not much to see here. It is kind of the minimally viable product. Let's take a look now and see what it's like to actually use this thing. So this is the interface you're going to encounter when you first load up your Oculus Go. And I was very pleased with the head tracking on it. It was very, very accurate. The image quality was excellent also. It's got a 1440p display in here, which is on par with the other VR systems out there, including the PC-based ones. The only difference, though, is that this runs at a lower frame rate, 60 frames per second on this one versus 75 on the Mirage Solo from Lenovo we looked at 2 weeks ago versus 90 frames per second on the desktop version of the Oculus as well as the HTC Vive. Nonetheless, the head tracking, for me at least, was good enough, in fact exceptionally good enough, that it really didn't feel like it was running any slower than those systems did, and I wasn't getting disoriented or anything else like that. So they really did a good job on the head tracking side. The interface itself was okay. I really found that they were trying to direct me back to their store whenever possible. The stuff you can buy is always front and center, and the stuff you already own is kind of pushed off to the side. So you do have to dig around a bit to get at the apps that you've purchased or want to use. So I was hoping they might make some adjustments to make this a little bit more friendly towards the media that you've already purchased and want to get back to again versus always trying to put more stuff in front of you. But ultimately, this is a platform for selling you things, and that is certainly going to be the focus, at least for now, of their interface. I also downloaded a bunch of different apps and tried a few different things out to see what the experience was like, and we'll take a look at a few of those apps now. So we're going to kick things off with a Bladerunner game that I downloaded to my Oculus Go. It looks great, actually. You can't control the car, unfortunately. You just kind of go on rails and just look around, but it's a very convincing experience, and one of the things that all of these VR systems do very well is 3D. So in addition to getting this immersive thing where you can look around the environment, you also get a very realistic spatiality to everything because you are getting a 3D image. And in this instance, as I was driving around in this car, you could see the pillars and the glass being closer to you than what was going on outside. It's a very convincing experience, even on something as low-end as this. Now, I wanted to start off with this Bladerunner game because we also looked at a Bladerunner game on the Lenovo Mirage system, which is running with Google Daydream. And the difference between that more expensive Mirage system and this one is that the Mirage system supports 6 degrees of movement, essentially. So while the Oculus Go here just allows you to look left, right, up, and down, the Mirage system allowed you to actually walk through the world if you want, or look closer at something and have that object that you're looking at get closer to you as a result. It's a very realistic and natural kind of way to explore some of these virtual worlds. And you can see some footage that I was doing on the Bladerunner game on the Mirage, where I was looking closer at the console with my head, and I was able to have the scene react the way you would expect it to if you were actually sitting in that car. This headset doesn't support that kind of freedom. So all you're going to be able to get is left, right, up, and down. If you move your head closer to something, it's just going to get a little wobbly and not actually react to that. So this is something I think that is best suited for games that have you seated or standing and not moving around all that much. But if you are into that kind of thing where you want that full immersion and that 6 degrees of freedom, that's maybe at the point where you go up to the more expensive PC-based systems that do support that. And Oculus Rift system supports that, as well as the HTC Vive. And of course, you could also get that in one of the Google Daydream systems that are supporting that immersive technology as well. Just be aware that you'll get a nice experience here, but it won't be as good as some of the more expensive systems. Now, this next one is the ISS Space Station experience. I had a real blast floating around the space station. They even let you grab onto things, and you can kind of fling yourself forward with some momentum. So there's some basic physics going on with this, and it gives you a real appreciation for how the astronauts make use of the space that they have aboard the space station, because there's no up or down in space, which means that 1 minute the ceiling could be the floor or the wall. It doesn't really matter. It's just a matter of what your perspective is at that point in time, and this really gives you a sense of that, which is something you can't get from looking at a bunch of still photos. They did a very nice job modeling the station. You can even take a spacewalk and float around outside of it if you want. Really fun, definitely worth checking out, and you can't beat the price. And this is one game, too, where you might want that 6 degrees of freedom, because I was finding myself trying to move my head closer to things to take a closer look at it. I'm spoiled by these other systems I've used. Unfortunately, you can't do that with this particular system, but you can, of course, float yourself a little bit closer to them if you want. And this is the Droid Repair Bay, which is a Star Wars game where you can fix BB-8 and his buddies. They come out to you one at a time. You can take them apart and swap out their chips and everything, and then take them for a spin around the lab. Now, of course, this is more fun on a 6-degree system like the HTC Vive or the Oculus Rift, but here it's good enough. You can certainly get a very similar gameplay experience. All the charm is there. the graphics are decent enough, and I found it to be a pretty fun experience for free that you can have on these VR platforms. And this one is Land's End, which is more of a chill experience, and it's a puzzle game that you control just by looking at things. This is a paid app. I think it's about $8 or so in the Oculus store. Again, it looks good, pretty simple graphics, which is what we're seeing across the board for the most part on the go, but there is a pretty good gameplay experience here if you're looking for something a little less stressful than perhaps a shooting game or something like that. So they do have a good mix of available titles on their app store. And if you're looking for something with a little less intensity, you can invite your friends over in the Oculus Rooms app and play board games like Boggle, chat with them with their avatars and stuff as well. So if you're not so keen on the motion heavy kinds of games, you can play some more traditional games with less motion and have your friends in there to talk with as well, no matter where they are in the world with their little avatar sitting right next to you. So there's a lot of stuff actually available for this. I guess it's binary compatible with Samsung's GearVR system, so all the apps that were over on that platform I think are also available on this one or will be shortly. The developers don't have to do much to get them ready for this platform, so I was very surprised to see as much stuff as there was when I first got in there, and I'm sure we'll be seeing more of it just given how many GearVR users are out there. So I think you'll have a very good selection of software to choose from. But from the app perspective, there still isn't a killer app. In many ways, this era right now reminds me of what it was like when the Atari 2600 and some of these 8-bit game consoles came out, where there were a lot of fun, short-lived experiences, but nothing really in-depth because the technology wasn't quite there yet. And I think that's where we are with this virtual reality world. So don't expect the kinds of games that you'll see on your console where you can put 40 or 50 hours into them. I think you're going to find a lot of short-lived experiences that are a ton of fun and really fun to share with your friends, but not something you're going to be coming back to over and over again. But the real strength of this device, I think, is going to be its media playback capability. It's well suited for that given the mobile processor that it has. There's a lot of media apps available. So of course Plex is on it. Plex is a sponsor here on the channel in full disclosure, but that's an app and server that I use to manage my own media. So I've got all of my movies and TV shows stored on a hard drive in my closet over there. I can use Plex on the headset here to watch stuff when I'm home, but also when I'm not at home, which is really cool. You get a nice theater experience if you want, and you can change the environments around. You can also invite friends over. They've got a really innovative way to queue up content also. You just grab the media you want and throw it down on the couch next to you, and you can pull it up as you go with it. So they've done a nice job with their VR app, and it works seamlessly with their server software that is part of how Plex works. I'll put a link down below so you can find the full Plex details there. You'll also find Netflix on here along with Hulu and a few other popular media apps. Netflix has a nice living room motif to their thing. You get a nice perceived huge screen in front of you to watch your Netflix content on, and the video quality is good. The images are very crisp and clear on this device, and it looks good. It won't look as good as the 4K TV in your house, but you'll get a very convincing kind of experience with these media apps as you're using them. Another one I was having a lot of fun with was called Pegasus, which allows you to play back your own media over your local network or media that you load directly onto the Oculus Go itself. And it's got a very nice movie theater with nice lighting effects, and you can basically you kind of feel like you're watching a movie in a movie theater. It really gives you that sense of scale and depth, again, because you've got a 3D image here coming to your eyes. Many of these apps, including Plex, support 3D movies as well. So if you have 3D media, you can actually watch it in 3D on the headset and get that experience too. VR 180 videos and VR 360 videos are also supported on Plex and a few of these other platforms as well. Another one that's kind of an emerging app on the platform is called Bigscreen, and this allows you at the moment to stream video from your PC, including games, and get it onto like a larger screen that you can play on inside of the VR environment. Right now the latency isn't quite there, so they recommend it more for streaming media and that kind of thing from your PC, but they're working on improving the latency, and I think as they get there, this will be a lot more fun, and I think we'll have some really fun implications for playing games on a virtual big screen. Maybe you could project your game into a movie theater, for example, and get that experience. So I think if they get the latency worked out, it's going to be a really fun platform to play with. Right now, the latency just is not good enough for gaming. One other cool thing about Big Screen is that it allows you to connect to other people's computers and watch what they're watching in the environment that they're watching in. So if somebody's watching a movie, you can log into their room essentially and watch their movie as they do. So you can invite all your friends over and watch the same thing together in a very realistic theater environment. Plex has that ability to do that as well. So there's some really cool concepts here that I'm seeing develop on the media playback front that I think are very well suited for low-cost VR options like this one. So overall, I think this is a very nice, minimally viable VR product. It's not going to blow your socks off, but if you are a general consumer looking to try out this VR thing, this is a very low-risk way to get into it. There's nothing to it. You just turn it on and put it on your head and off you go. You don't have to have a computer with the right graphics card or piece together all the other components you need. Just buy this, take it out of the box, pair it up with your phone, put the phone away, and go at it. And I think that is what they were looking to achieve here. They've done that. The price is right. I think the 32 gigabyte version is probably okay for most consumers, but I think if you do plan to use this more heavily and download some additional media, the 64 gig might be better. The two things that could be improved with this, one of course would be adding 6 degrees of freedom, but that of course would add to the cost. But an SD card slot for future iterations would make a lot of sense just because they are really trying to get you to download and buy a bunch of things, but you can't store all that much on it even with 64 gigabytes. So hopefully we'll see that added to it in the future. But overall, I think if you are looking to try VR on the cheap, this is a great low-budget way to get in the door. This is Lon.TV. Thanks for watching.
This channel is brought to you by the Lon.TV supporters, including gold-level supporters of the Black Eyed and Blues Music Hour podcast, Chris Allegretta, and Kalyan Kumar. If you want to help the channel, you can by contributing as little as $1 a month. Head over to lon.tv/support to learn more. And don't forget to subscribe. Visit lon.tv/s.